All right, the time is 7 o'clock, and I'm going to call to order the special meeting of the Duncanville City Council. This is a town hall meeting that we are doing by video conference with virtual software. In accordance with an order of the Office of the Governor issued on March 16th, 2020, is extended by the Office of the Governor on June 12th, 2020. The City Council for the City of Duncanville, Texas will conduct City Council special meetings by video conference at 7 p.m. on Tuesday, April 13th, 2021. In order to advance the public health goal of limiting face-to-face meetings, also called social distancing, in an effort to slow the spread of the coronavirus pandemic. This is an open meeting conducted by video conference. There will be no public access to a physical location. To speak during the town hall meeting after the presentation, it was necessary for individuals to register prior to the meeting by 4 o'clock this afternoon. And as been informed, there is no citizen input that has registered prior to. So Mr. Summerlin is our primary presenter. I don't believe that we will have any questions or comments coming in from our citizens that they didn't pre-register for. A recording of the video meeting will be made available to the public in accordance with the Opens Meeting Act upon written request. So I want to welcome everyone to this budget town hall, and I have some opening comments I'd like to make. First of all, that we do have a full city council here for this tonight. And so I would like to just go on, if we could, by each council member introducing themselves, and we'll go in numerical order, as sometimes we do that when I go around the table. So starting with Council Member Vera Cruz and concluding with Council Member Harvey as at large. So Mr. Vera Cruz, please.
I'm sorry, sir, you were broken up a little.
Just introduce yourself real quick. Just going around the table real quick.
Yes, sir. Joe Vera Cruz, City Council Member, District 1.
Thank you.
Don McBurnett, City Council, District 2.
Thank you.
Monty Anderson, District 3.
Thank you.
Mark Cooks, District 4.
And Mayor Pro Tem.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Ms. Jameson. Well, she was there. Let's go on, Mr. Harvey.
Council member at large.
Thank you very much. And Ms. Jameson comes on. We'll be happy to let her come in. All right.
I'm here.
There you are. I was just going around the table.
Can you hear me?
Now we can. Yeah, we've got you now. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
We just lost you. Well, I'll carry it for Council Member Janet Jameson from District 5. Okay. The primary purpose tonight is to go over the processes that we as a city use to develop the budget for the city. And what we want to do is introduce citizens to the process itself, and to let you know that this is an entire team effort of the entire council and the staff. Each staff directorate goes through their particular aspect of the budget, then comes through finance, then comes to us as a council. And then we as individual council members have a responsibility to go over it and go through it and come up with our best recommendations in terms of ideas, concurrences, or things that we think that need to be added or taken out. There are various funds that will be presented to you tonight in terms of those different revenue streams and the expenses that are associated with those revenue streams. There may be some terms used that citizens may not be familiar with. And Mr. Summerlin, we can later put out maybe a glossary of those terms that people might not be familiar with. One of the things that we contend with, we as all cities, not just the city of Duncanville, but all cities contend with, are some issues that make the budgeting process very complex. First of all, there are state-imposed restrictions on our revenue streams, and those come to us through Austin, and we have to comply with those. They are ordinances, they are laws, and they sometimes impede our ability to generate the revenues that we feel necessary to support our citizens and our city. And there are state deadlines that we have to contend with in terms of how the budget is put together, when it's presented, and when it's finally submitted to the state. And then on top of that, there are state and federally imposed accounting and auditing requirements. And sometimes Mr. Summerlin and his staff have to contend with new things coming down the pike. And those are costly in terms of record keeping and submission of documents and so forth. So the accounting process is very complex and a costly one as well. Now, in terms of how good are we as a city, we have an exemplary finance staff, and that is testified to by the bond rating that we have. That is the highest possible for a municipality. It's exceptional. And we're just in our last city council meeting, we just received an audit for the comprehensive annual financial report. This is the acronym for that is CAFR, C-A-F-R. And there were 0 findings, not even findings or notes. And to use a proper term for that is an audit that is pristine. That is such a testament to the professionalism of Summerlin and Tia Pettis and for the entire staff for what they're doing for us on that. The current financial crisis that we have is spurred by the COVID-19 virus, and it's impacted several of our revenue streams. And Mr. Summerlin is going to be able to go through that and give a comparison in terms of things that have occurred, not just for the past couple of years, but maybe some long-term issues that you will put into perspective, or our citizens will see in the perspective of what we have to do. But we are constantly striving to provide our citizens with the highest possible services in terms of infrastructure and citizen safety. So what we have in terms of when we put the budget together are fund balances, and these fund balances will be explained in more detail by Mr. Summerlin when he goes through it. And when we look at those fund balances are there to ensure that we have the necessary operating capital in the event of emergencies or in the event that there are some extraordinary expenses that have to be taken care of that we didn't anticipate during the budgeting process. Some of you from the business environment may see those as capital expenditure projects or capital investment projects. You know, one of the terms that is very commonly applied to the budgeting process in terms of the accounting function is a fiduciary responsibility. And I think it's important for us to know, each of us on city council and each of the members of the staff at directorate level, we are fiduciaries. And a definition of a fiduciary is an individual in whom another has placed the utmost trust and confidence to manage and protect property or money. And that's our responsibility. We take it very, very seriously. And we work tirelessly, both the city council and the staff, to merit the trust placed in all of us to ensure the optimum outcomes for the greater good of the entire citizenry. So thank you very much for your participation tonight. And with that, I will turn it over to Ms. Aretha Farrell-Benavides, our city manager. Aretha?
Thank you, Mayor Garden. I am pleased to be here as my first town hall as the city manager for the city of Duncanville. Staff has been working very closely with council and everyone to really focus on some of the challenges that we're facing, both from a financial and also just with limited resources. And I believe today is an opportunity for us to start our discussion for our next year's fiscal budget, but also to talk about some of the things that we're facing this year. We have an excellent team of individuals, a very lean organization of folks who have worked to maximize the resources we have available while also minimizing our expenses. We have with us today our interim assistant city manager, Chief Robert Brown, who was also our police chief, our interim police chief, Mark Lavigny. We have Julio Val, our library director, Sam Rohde, our fire chief, Bart Stevenson, our director of Parks and Rec, Tracy Beckman, our information technology director, Todd, who you see his face, Siegel, who's our Director of Human Resources, Our PIO, Alex Hamby, he is here and filtering questions. We also have Brian Greg Ramey, who is our Director of Public Works. And then we have our City Secretary, Ms. Kristen Downs, who's all here today to support with our Finance Department. And as we talk about this, is a collective process. Each of our departments will be asked to develop a expense of what they think they need and what we desire for the future. And so I will now turn it over to our Finance Director, who is going to take you through our conversation today, Mr. Richard Summerlin. Richard?
Thank you, Ms. Benavides. Appreciate that. And thank you, Mayor Gordon, for the introduction. I'm going to share my screen, which will have the PowerPoint that I intend to present tonight here. And okay, so can everyone see the screen? Okay, very good. All right. So what I wanted to do is give everyone a feel for how our budget process works. We kick off our budget in March of each year. And then during the month of April, we typically have a town hall meeting to receive citizens input. And that is where the point we're at tonight. And also during the months of March and April, the city departments are reviewing their current year budgets, and they're also working to develop their next fiscal year budget and analyzing what they need and where we're at in the current budget. Then during the months of April and May, we have approximately 58 cost centers, and those all come before the city manager and the finance department with their department directors. And we go through their budgets pretty much line item by line item and comb through that, looking for things that perhaps have been left out, but more importantly, areas where we may be able to cut back or have opportunities to eliminate something or perhaps shared resource with another department or with another city. And so that's where the meat of the work is done, is through April and May with all of those meetings. And then in June, we take all of the results from that work in April and May, and we have a budget workshop with the city council and get them to understand kind of where we're at and what we're looking at for the upcoming fiscal year. And then we typically have them give us an idea of what they want to propose for the tax rate. And then in July, we receive our certified tax roll from the Dallas Central Appraisal District, DCAD. Then on July 31st, the city manager has to file the budget per the city charter with the city secretary and the county, Dallas County. And then in August, we receive our no new revenue tax rate and our voter approval tax rates. Those are very important rates. Of course, the no new revenue rate is what used to be the effective tax rate, and the VA rate is what used to be the rollback rate. And you cannot exceed the voter approval rate without having to have an election and the citizens have the tax rate you set if it exceeds the voter approval rate. Then in August, we have our final budget workshop with the city council. And that's based on their input and direction from the June workshop, along with any other modifications. Sometimes we have new information with changes in revenues or expenditures that we'll present at that time. Then in August, we have a public hearing on the budget. And then in September, we have a public hearing on the tax rate. Both of those things are required. Then in September, we finally approve and adopt the tax rate as required by law. So I wanted to give everyone somewhat of a feel for our entire budget as a whole. So the total, this is for all funds combined, the total for all funds combined for our fiscal year 21 budget was $61 million. And the revenues, of course, coming in are primarily from property tax, which represent about 31%, and sales tax at a little less than 16%. And then our water fees at 15.5%. I'm sorry, our wastewater fees at 15.5%, and then our water fees at 13.36%. And then we have transfers, garbage fees, franchise receipts, field house revenue, other miscellaneous revenue, hotel occupancy tax revenue, and drainage fees. And so many of these revenues are restricted for specific use. They can't be used for general fund matters. And so the primary things that support the general fund are the property and sales tax, and then some of the other miscellaneous and franchise receipts. Whoops. Then if we look at our budgeted revenues by fund, you can see that our general fund has about, makes up about 53% of that, the utility fund about 30%, solid waste 7%, field house 2%, the Duncanville Community Economic Development Corporation 4%, and then some of the other miscellaneous funds about 5%. Oops, I'm sorry. Hit the wrong button. Okay, so if we look at the budget expenditures by category, you can see that the city is very heavy. It's with salaries and benefits. That's because we're a service organization, and the primary things that get done are through people. So salary and benefits make up almost 40% of that. And then services and maintenance, these are things that we hire others to do from outside for services, and then along with some of our utility costs, about 35% of the expenditures, and then transfers out about 13%, and then debt service is a very small component at 3%, and then supplies, internal services, one-time projects, capital, and then economic development and hotel occupancy grants make up the remainder. Sorry, I keep losing my buttons. There we go. So
Councilmember Mac Burnett has his hand raised.
yes, sir.
Mr. Summerlin, when we're looking at the budgets and you have revenues of a certain amount and you have expenses at a different amount, would you kind of address that, how it was in the slide and why we?
Yes, I will. Thank you for noting that. As Councilmember Mac Burnett pointed out, our expenditures exceeded our revenues. And so the reason for that is because we have fund balance. That's kind of like your savings account. And so in that total budgeted expenditures, there about $1.5 million of one-time project funds. And so if you strip out those one-time project funds from those expenditures, you basically have a balanced operational budget. So the revenues pretty much equal the expenditures. And so that's and Councilmember Harvey has his hand up.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you, Richard. On the previous chart, when you showed service maintenance would include raw water purchases from DWU and sewer treatment services from TRA, right?
That would be correct, yes.
All right. And if you go back one slide, another slide. So the sales tax number there, that includes both the general fund portion and the portion for sales tax corporations?
That includes the entire amount of sales tax. And the way our sales tax is broken down is that we have basically, we get 2% back from the state. 1% of that goes into the general fund. 0.5% of that 2% goes for property tax relief. That was an election that the city made many, many years ago in order to reduce property taxes. And so that money is dedicated. It has to go to the general fund and be used for general fund purposes. And then the other 0.5% goes to fund the Economic Development Corporation.
Right. So it's part available for general appropriations and part to pursue activities that are sanctioned by the sales tax corporation law. Right.
And it goes to fund, the 0.5% goes to fund the Duncanville Community Economic Development Corporation, which is for economic stimulus, economic growth.
Right. That's what I was referring to. And the property tax, part of it, share of it goes to general government, but also a portion of it goes to debt service for the bonds that we sold.
That's correct.
Thank you so much. That's it.
So I wanted to talk a minute about some of the budget fundamentals. Tonight, we're really going to concentrate on the general fund and the utility fund. Those are the two bigger ones that we deal with, and the things that I feel most citizens are mostly interested in. So government funds are those that support public safety and general public works, streets, sidewalks, library, government administration, finance, and accounting. And again, they're supported primarily with the property tax revenues and sales tax revenues. And so if we look at the property tax, the tax rate for citizens that live in the Duncanville Independent School District per $100 taxable value, the school tax is basically $1.36, which is about 50%, a little over 50% of your total tax bill. And then the city tax is just under 72 cents per 100, which represents about 26.3% of your total tax bill. And then Parkland Hospital has 9.8%, the county tax 9.2%, And then Dallas County Community College District makes up the other 4.6%. And also, when we look at sales tax, most people pay 8.25% on taxable goods. And of course, 6.25% of that goes to the state. So that's 75% of the total sales tax. And then, as I just mentioned, 2% goes to the city, which is 24.2%. And 50% of that goes to the general fund, 25% goes towards that property tax relief in the general fund that I spoke of, and then 25% goes to the Duncanville Economic Development. Okay, so if we look at our total FY 21 budget expenditures by fund, let's see, did I go backwards? I'm sorry. I keep missing my buttons down here. So yeah, I wanted to show this graphically, how your tax bill breaks down. So again, 50% of your tax bill goes to the independent school district, 26% goes to the city of Duncanville, and then the remainder goes to various Dallas County entities. So now I want to look specifically, laser out the general funds, that total revenue by source, 32 million, 22% sales tax, 55% on property tax, and then we have the other smaller.
Richard, you muted yourself, sir.
And then I have a question for Richard too.
I'm sorry. Thank you. Is there? I'm sorry. I keep having to move my bar around because it's in the way of my screen. Let me see if I can find a place to park this thing up here.
Hey, Richard.
Cooks, go ahead and ask his question while you're doing that.
Yes. Go ahead, Mark.
On this sales tax, yes, 22.42, but on your last slide, it had sales tax at 15%. Help me out with that.
This is because that's the 15% of the grand total of all revenues for all funds. This is a percentage of general fund revenues. So
Okay.
it's a different base.
All right, thank you.
Richard,
Yes, ma'am.
you can move the slides by just pressing enter if you have it in play mode, so it won't affect you muting and unmuting.
Okay, I'm sorry. I keep having to move my bar around, but yeah, I will do that. Thank you. Well, for some reason that didn't work, but okay, moving along. So what do the general fund revenues support? Of course, they support all of our public safety. That's police, which includes your patrol, your crime prevention, your criminal investigation, animal control, your school crossing guards, and then your fire and emergency medical services. You have fire suppression, emergency medical response, your fire inspections, and then fire education. And then with public works, you have your streets, your signs and signals, vehicle equipment maintenance, alley maintenance, engineering planning, building inspections, health inspections, code enforcement. And then of course, with parks and recreation, you've got your parks and grounds, mowing maintenance, bike walking trails, all your park facilities and playgrounds, beautification along the entrances and centerways of our streets, litter control, rec center, special events, recreation, athletic programs, and of course our senior center. And then with the library, you've got a litany of different services they provide: books, periodicals, computer services, digital information, just a few. And then, of course, with our PIO office that helps us to maintain our website to get out information to citizens, also publishes our newsletters in the Champion and social media. And then, of course, IT, one of the biggest things that we have to fight against these days is cybersecurity. And we're constantly being bombarded with phishing schemes and people trying to tap into our systems to steal money, steal information. And so it's a huge endeavor that we have to provide these days in order to protect our information from those who are out to harm us. And there's people that are just constantly at work 24/7 trying to hack into places to disrupt. And of course, ransomware is one of the biggest threats that you have out there, where they actually steal your data files and they encrypt them, and then you have to pay money in order to get them back. And then of course, you're never sure if you're going to get them back or not. Accounting and finance, of course, we're there to ensure that all the taxpayer dollars that we collect are protected and spent according to their legal and authorized purposes, including our annual independent audit. Looking at the general fund expenditures by their cost centers, you can see again that about half of the general fund is public safety, with police at 28% and fire at 21%. And then public works rounding out the other large area at 21%. And then parks, recreation, general government, finance, and then other grants and reserves. So one of the things that we always want to look at is some of our neighboring cities and how we compare to them in terms of what we have to do. We have to provide the same basic services as all the other cities do. And so if you take our 2020 taxable valuations and divide those by the population, you come up with this taxable value per capita. And you can see that Duncanville is on the very lowest end of the spectrum when you look at compared to Lancaster, Cedar Hill, DeSoto, and Dallas. And that again speaks to the leanness of the organization, and we do more with fewer people. Then on this slide, I essentially do this a little bit different, where I take the total tax levy. So this takes into account the tax rate that each of those cities charge their citizens. And so if you take the total tax levy per capita and compare Duncanville to Cedar Hill, Lancaster, DeSoto, and Dallas, you see again that we're on the very lowest end of that spectrum at $472 per person.
Richard, Mr. Harvey had his hand right.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Doesn't that also reflect our the age of our housing stock, and also the fact that we are pretty much built out? The reason why I point that out is because the other cities have available land and subdivisions and that sort of thing, and they are able to build with that undeveloped land more expensive homes than, let's say, a Duncanville is capable of doing. So would that also be a factor in that?
Well, to some degree, you definitely have higher home values in Dallas than you do in Duncanville, but you also have a wider spectrum of low-income housing in your larger cities as well. And so there's never a perfect comparison thing, but I think it's a good benchmark. It helps us to understand how we stack up against other cities, and I think it's a valuable tool.
Oh, and I will say too that I can't see the cities on the bottom end that we're comparing to. So I see the charts, but it cuts off probably about at $100. I can't see below $100. So I'm not quite sure what cities those are. My question assumed the best Southwest cities.
Yeah. Okay. I'm sorry that I've got at least on my screen, I see them. So
I see all of them as well. They're all there.
I see them as well too.
Oh, so you all see the city names?
Yes, we do. Yes, we do.
Oh, okay. Well, then it's my computer then. All
You
right.
might
Sorry
need to
about that.
maximize your screen, sir.
All right. I'll work on that. Thank you so much.
well, let me just tell you real quick so that you have a frame of reference, and I'll go from left back to right. The red column represents Duncanville, and then the next column over is Cedar Hill, and then Lancaster, then DeSoto, and then Dallas.
All right. Thanks a lot.
And so here I wanted to compare the city of the cities, our surrounding cities, again with the tax rate. So I mapped out the tax rates from 2012 to 2021, and so you can see as we've moved through the years that. In general, most people have come down. Dallas has stayed more flat, but City of Duncanville being the black line that's sort of in the middle of the graph or toward the bottom. Our tax rate, we've lowered the last 2 years, so that's really trended us down toward DeSoto and Cedar Hill. And so discussing those tax rates, again, the last 2 years, we have lowered the property tax rate. We lowered it 1.5 cents for the tax year 2019. And then with the SB2 property tax cap, we lowered it 2.7 cents for the tax year 2020. And so that is where we're at, and we will continue to look at that and present to council the most appropriate tax rate given all the calculations when we get them. So one of the things that we talked about is a lean organization. So we have these cities that the council picked to do our salary surveys and to compare against. So citizens served per employee. If you look at all the ones that are on here, we fall kind of in the middle of this range. At somewhere near just about 150 employees served. 150 citizens served per employee. One of the other tools that we look at is how we stack up in terms of the average payroll per employee to see if we're overpaid or underpaid. And with the cities that we have in this comparative group, all very near the bottom of that range. So that tells us that, again, we're a lean organization. We're not overpaying our employees. We're not even close to the middle of the pack. We're at the very lowest end of the spectrum. So just summarizing everything, we are a lean organization when we compare ourselves to other cities in the area. And of course, the economic downturn that we've experienced with COVID-19 has taken quite a toll on our sales tax revenue. The recovery from COVID-19 still is a little bit uncertain. I've seen sparks of economic activity, but I don't have enough data to really be able to firmly say that, you know, we're coming out of this bit of economic depression. Of course, we've had legislative mandates that have taken away from our city revenues over the past several years. I mentioned SB 2, which capped our property taxes at 3.5% per year. Also, HB 1631 eliminated red light cameras. We used all of that money to increase the safety of our traffic control systems and traffic lights. And that now has to be paid from the general fund instead of from the red light camera fund.
Richard, Richard, so is all the red light camera money funds are now completed? Is that correct? Is that what I'm hearing?
We're no longer able to collect any more funds, of course, for quite some time. We do have a small residual balance in our red light funds that we're spending down. We had some money set aside for some grant stuff that we ended up getting a refund for, and so we kind of almost had it spent up, and then we got some refund back. So now we're working to spend that again, but it's minuscule. We have just a very small amount of red light funds left.
No, that was the question. Do we have any left? I'm sure later you will show us what that minimum amount is. Will we see that at some point?
No, I'm trying not to get off into that level of detail tonight. I'm trying to stay at a 30,000 foot level.
Okay, all right.
Yeah. So, council members, remember, this is a town hall. It's not a budget workshop.
Right,
So,
but you still have questions, Amir.
Yes, you do. But in terms of the depth of those questions, just consider where we're at in terms of what Richard is trying to communicate more from a 50,000 foot level. When we get into our workshops, that's what we're going to come down to, you know, the ground level.
Okay, yeah, that was the question. Will we see it at some point? So I think the answer is yes, we will see it at some point.
Yes, you will. Yeah.
All right.
We presented the red light fund this past year in a budget workshop, and we will do so again this year until it's gone completely.
Richard, would it be safe to say, I think we spoke in a meeting about utilizing these funds for our sidewalk program, the residual amount. Is that not correct?
We did talk about that, and I think there was a ramp, a small expenditure for some type of ramp. I forget exactly what they called it. That they wanted to use red light. Red light funds are restricted to public safety improvements only, so it can't just be spent for anything. The sidewalks do qualify for connectivity and safety. Yeah.
Yeah, that's our FY21 program is funded out of most of the remaining sidewalk program or red light.
That's Greg Ramey, our Public Works Director. Thank you, Greg. So then one of the other things that we had legislative impact on was Senate Bill 1152, which reduced our telecom franchise fees by about $100,000 a year. So, you know, maintaining our competitive pay and our benefits continues to be a challenge. We see that we compete with all the cities around us and with cities to the far north. And so it seems like most of the people that we see that exit the city of Duncanville are going to another city somewhere, and usually because they have better benefits and better pay. Providing exceptional services, of course, with this lean staff is always a challenge. And then the mayor spoke early about some of the accounting and regulatory issues that we face. And so compliance with those unfunded mandates all across the city, not just in accounting, are difficult to maintain. We usually get anywhere between 2 and 3, sometimes up to 4 new accounting standards that we have to comply with every year, which means more time, more work paper, more staff time, more work in the audit. And it just, you know, and none of it ever goes away. When they add a new accounting standard, it's just something new. They don't ever take anything away from you. Restoration of deferred street maintenance and other building and equipment maintenance costs also continue to present challenges. And so now we're going to switch over to our business type enterprise funds. The definition of those are that the fund must be self-supporting. In other words, you can't receive any support from other funds. Revenues and expenditures are legally restricted to the activities and the services that operate the fund. And we have at the city of Duncanville, we have 3 funds that are enterprise funds. That's our water utility fund, our solid waste or our garbage fund, and then our field house fund. And so tonight we're going to really kind of concentrate on the utility fund. So our transfer utility and the solid waste fund to the general fund, and these transfers they're based on studies that we have performed by our outside consultants, and they transfer the cost of support that's performed by general government employees, those that are housed and paid in the general fund, and those are, of course, are audited annually by our independent auditor. Examples of some of that support that is paid for in the general fund would be our information technology, cybersecurity, finance and accounting, of course, human resources, and there's also a public safety element. So in the utility fund, I think it's important to stop and think, well, what does it really take to have water available at every faucet, every business in the city of Duncanville, and also available at the fire hydrants to fight fires for fire suppression. We have to maintain a capacity to hold 17.5 million gallons of water, and we have to keep that on reserve at all times, with about 3 million gallons of that held elevated storage tanks. And to support the distribution of that requires about 257 miles of underground water pipe. If you laid that on end to end, that would stretch from Duncanville to San Antonio, just to give you an idea of how much water pipe we have to maintain. We have to have pump stations and, of course, water quality monitoring to ensure that we have safe drinking water. We also have to have properly trained and licensed workers to maintain our water system safety. When they go in to make a repair, they have to use certain precautions to ensure that contaminants don't fall into the pipe and contaminate our water system. What does it take to ensure, then again, on the wastewater side, that when you flush your toilet or you turn water on in your sink, that it goes down the drain and goes away for every home, every business in the city of Duncanville? Well, it takes about 151 miles of underground wastewater pipe, which would be Duncanville to about North Austin if you laid that on end to end. But we also have to maintain permits to operate those wastewater treatment facilities. They're not operated by the city, they're operated by the Trinity River Authority. And they clean our wastewater because of those permits to near drinking quality water before they're able to discharge it back into 10 Mile Creek and the Trinity. The trends that we've noticed over the past many years is that each year the cost of water increases about 5%. And also the wastewater treatment is increasing between 5 and 7% each year. So we've not raised water or wastewater rates the past 3 years. We've been using our fund balance to make up the deficit of the expenditures over the revenues. We talked about that a little bit on the general fund side. And so that's basically our account. And so we've been using that and paying down as we go. The fund balance was being a new technology called AMI, Automated Meter Infrastructure. And people say, well, what is that? And why are we looking at it? Why do we need it? Well, currently we have meters that have to walk the entire city, the water meters, every individual meter, and then of course into our system and to create bills that go out to the citizens. So this automated meter infrastructure will use a radio type technology to transmit water usage reports to the city. So we don't have to have guys that go out and read the meters. It would come in via radio read. And we will have, if we implement AMI, we will have a portal that people can either go on their personal computers or on their smartphones and monitor their own usage. And it'll also allow them to set alerts so that if their water usage increases, let's say, more than 5% in a certain time period, say a window of 12 hours or something, they get an alert. And so we feel like this is going to really help our citizens to manage their own water use and also to detect leaks much quicker. The cost that we've estimated is approximately $8 million to implement the automated meter infrastructure system. And again, a portion of that implementation cost can be paid right now from the utility fund balance, but we're going to probably need to have alternate financing for the remainder. We're not going to have the entire $8 million to pay for this out of pocket. So I always like to take a look at water bottles. People, tend to buy water bottles for convenience when they're traveling or going to athletic events, etc. And average water bottle is about 16.9 ounces. And typically you would pay 50 cents a bottle if you purchased in bulk. Pay upwards of anywhere from $1 to $2 a bottle if you get it out of a vending machine. But taking 50 cents a bottle, it would take 7.6 bottles of water to equal a gallon. And at that rate, that would be $3.79 a gallon for water. And right now, Duncanville citizens can use 7,000 gallons of water and pay less than 0.5 cent per gallon. So still a pretty good deal to use our water. And so wanted to talk for a minute about, what are some of the things that citizens can do to save water costs, having habits of turning water off while you're doing routine things like brushing your teeth, shaving, washing dishes. Always irrigate smartly. That is before o'clock in the morning and after 6 o'clock at night during the hot weather, because that helps to mitigate your evaporation of the water. You get the biggest bang for your buck if you do it after those hours. And so, of course, one of the most common things is that people irrigate too often. So a good, nice watering every 5 days is a recommended practice. If you water more often than that, you tend to encourage shallow roots in all of your plants. And that just is a self-perpetuating instance where it requires more and more water because those roots are shallow. If you water only every 5 days, then the roots tend to follow the water down and you produce a healthier plant because it has deeper roots. One example of a typical 1/4 acre lot with 4 turf zones running 20 minutes per zone, that'll use 1,000 gallons of water each time you have a water cycle. And the other thing that we find that really drives up our wastewater costs is the use of hand wipes. There are hand wipes that are marked as disposable, and they're not really disposable. Those things go down to the sewer plant and they clog up the machinery down there. And it's an awful lot of expense to tear that machinery down and to clean those things out when they get in there and clog stuff up. So please don't flush hand wipes, even if they say they're disposable. Don't flush them. Throw them in the solid waste into your garbage. And that will help tremendously. So we've developed a survey that we would like those who have tuned in tonight to go, and I put the link here where you can go and complete the budget input survey. And I thank everyone for their time, and I will open it up at this time to entertain questions. And I think I have to rely on IT or Kristen, whoever's running this, to let people in to ask questions.
Yes, if you have a question, could you please use the raise your hand feature on Zoom? If you're on the phone, if you could push *9 to raise your hand, and then we will let you know when it's time to speak. Okay, we have 2 hands raised, so we'll start with Miss Brown. IT, can you please allow her to speak?
She will need to unmute.
Do you have a, can you say something, Ms. Brown, so we can see if it's working? Ms. Brown, can you unmute yourself, please? Okay, Tracy, you want to allow her to talk now? Wait, you're muted again.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Oh, okay, thank you for patience. I was technically challenged. And I'm identifying myself as a Duncanville citizen homeowner for the past 15 years now. And I've always been concerned why there wasn't more attention to the empty retail space availability, which, looking at these pie charts, there seems to be room for growth in sales tax. And if we utilize more of the empty retail space, that would certainly bring revenue back to the city. I'm always looking for a place to eat. I have to leave Duncanville for entertainment, for eating out, for my for my children's activities. I would really like to see Duncanville develop more retail opportunity for us. So my question is, the economic development, can we get more information on what they've done or what they've trended in the last few years?
Mr. Brown, this is Barry Gordon, Mayor. I'd like to answer a portion of your question to let you know that the Economic Development Office aggressively seeks any type of business we can to occupy those vacant buildings. Vacant buildings in our city are a detriment to our economy. We do recognize that. And the nature of those, in terms of filling those spaces, is a difficult thing for us as a city. One of the things that in here, we have to look at developers. Developers tend to look at statistics, and there's some statistics that are not in our favor when they look at other places like going up north. The explosive economies in the north where major businesses are bringing their headquarters in from California and from the East Coast. And so what happens is that the statistic that some of the developers look at in terms of what's available to us is the median income, per capita income. And when we compare ourselves with some place like the Friscos and the Planos, we tend to be in a lower case for that. What we do in terms of trying to develop these places is invite these developers to come down and look at us, to look at our city, to look and see how beautiful our city is, and to look at those vacant spaces instead of them sitting in their offices and looking at their telephones and looking at the internet data and saying, well, we don't think there's enough money down south, so we're going to put our money up north. And that's just flat wrong. And, I'm just being straight and transparent and honest with you. It's a tough nut for us to crack, but we are very aggressive in trying to fill those vacant spaces. In terms of our success rate, you can see it. So we have some vacant spaces that have been vacant for quite some time, and it's a very difficult thing for us. Your question has merit, and I recognize that. We all recognize that as a council and our staff in economic development. And we do everything we can to fill those vacant spaces so that you can spend your money right here in Duncanville and not have to go other places to get a good meal or to eat or to buy retail goods. So just, want you to know that this is a problem. We recognize it and we work very aggressively on it.
And if I could just add one comment to what you're saying about getting developers to come in. Well, my love of Duncanville is the small town feel. And why don't we look more to our citizens who already appreciate Duncanville rather than trying to convince an outsider? As an example, the bodega tamale on Cedar Ridge. So the small town appeal, I think we should build on instead of trying to get big outside developers to come in. Thank you.
Thank you. Good point. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Brown. Okay, next we have Ms. Angela Jones. So we're gonna turn your mic on. You're muted. Okay, are you there?
I am, yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
Okay, great. So I have a couple of questions, so I can give them in rapid fire or one and then get back in line if you have others waiting. So my first one is regarding the property tax that Mr. Sumlin talked about. Mr. Sumlin, you gave the years of what the tax rate was and also when it was reduced. Do you have the revenue that was taken in during those years? So we can see the revenue that the city received, whatever years you have. I think you had 18 through 20. Because I suspect, I don't know this for certain, but I suspect that even though we reduced the tax rate because the property values were higher, the city still realized an equal or a greater amount of revenue. do you have that available to share? If not in this meeting, then at a future time?
I don't have that available tonight, but I've certainly have charts of that, and it's actually a part of our historical budgeting process. And yes, you're correct. In those years, even when we reduced the property tax rate, we did have more revenue than we had in the prior year. We also had increasing cost, of course, inflation and other things too that went along with that.
Okay, is it okay if I ask my next question, or should I wait for anyone that may be behind me?
You're okay to ask your next question.
Okay, great. And this may be for you also, Mr. Summerlin. I'm not sure. Do you have data available that shows us how many parcels within the city are owned by those residents age 65 and older?
I do. I have a complete breakdown of that. Again, I don't have that prepared to show to you tonight, but I do have that data, yes.
Okay, Christian, can I keep going?
Yes, ma'am, you can go.
Okay. My other question, Mr. Summerlin, again, will fall under the category of historical data as well. Just historically, what has the sales tax revenue been since maybe from 17 to 20? And I'm asking that because I personally want to see if the decline was there before COVID with the exit of some of the major retailers that we had in the city. Or would you know that just for being familiar with the numbers?
If you give me just a second, I actually know right where to go to pull a chart up that that will have that data. Yeah, so I have this in a worksheet. So what you could essentially say is that our total property tax, our total sales tax starting in 2012 was a little above $7 million. And that increased from 2012 as we came out of some of the housing crash. That increased in 13, it increased again in 14, stayed pretty even in 2015, increased again in 16, big leap in 17 and 18. And then for the first time in 2019, as we saw the exit of some of those larger retailers, it dropped slightly. And then in 2020, it dropped. We peaked out in 2018 at about $10.9 million, and it dropped to about 10.8 in 2019. And then in 2020, it dropped to a little below $10 million. So we had an exodus of a little over $900,000.
Okay, you mentioned that we had two years where there seemed to be good sales tax increase. Do we know what contributed to those? Were there events? Were there more businesses?
Thinking back through those years, we were adding some stuff from an economic standpoint, and the economy in general was very robust during that time.
Okay, thank you. And then not sure who this question is for, but I completed the survey, and I'm just wondering, would those results be shared with the residents? How many completed, what the biggest categories that we were most interested in, and then how the city will respond to those?
Yes, we intend to put together sort of a summary of how people responded and a percentage of different things that people responded in terms of what their suggestions were. And then, of course, as we build the budget this year, we will keep those things in mind. Oftentimes people do have ideas that are not, feasible. There's no funding available, but certainly within the parameters of funding that we have, we always keep those things in mind as we build the budget.
Okay, and then my final question, which is kind of a two-part question. For city staff employees, do they get a regular annual increase regardless of budget, regardless of inflation? So that's kind of part A. And then part B, in 2020, did city staff employees get an increase?
Yes, I can address that. The non-service regular employees only get a raise if council approves for there to be an increase in the budget. Civil service people, to the degree, and this is your fire and police, to the degree that they're within the ranks of their step increases, those are guaranteed and they have to be funded from year to year regardless. And so in 2020, we programmed in a mid-year increase. It was 2%. We programmed that into the budget. And we did a mid-year because we promised that we would go back and look and see how our sales tax and other revenues were performing. And so we've not yet got to the point where we're ready to address that. So no, at this point, no raises have been given for 2020, even though we're just at the mid-year point where they should have been enacted, because we're still very unclear about where our revenues are going.
So let me ask you this. I guess I thought I was done, but I'm not, based on your response. So it sounds like, and correct me if I'm wrong, that if we programmed in raises for the city, regardless of the pandemic, they may still get them, even though we're telling the residents that we were down here, here, and here. So I just want to understand, when we talk about cuts, is it never considered, not our essential personnel, is it ever considered that staff? I've worked in corporate America for many, many years, and some years I got an increase, some years I didn't. It was just kind of based on the performance of the company. So are there years where city staff employee, not the fire and police, do not get an increase, or is there almost an increase each year?
There were many years, thinking, I've worked for the city for 14 years, and I've gone as long as 5 and 6 years without there being any pay increases. And the past several years, we've been more consistent because we've had such a loss of personnel. That's one of the things that, as a fiduciary duty that the council has and management has, is to look at the attrition. And so when people are leaving to go to other jobs that are paying higher, and you're having to replace those employees with lesser qualified people, you have to look at that, because there's a cost in losing those people. And we not only lose them in the civilian workforce, but we lose them in fire and police as well, even though they have their step increases, because the overall salaries are very low. I demonstrated in tonight's presentation that, based on a survey of a number of other cities, that we're very lean. We're the lowest, actually next to the lowest. I think Little Elm is the only city in that survey that's lower than us in terms of their per employee capita pay.
I'm glad that you are a gentleman that considers surveys, because one of these surveys that I read last year, as I was doing training with an organization, is most employees don't leave because of money. They leave because of other issues. So when these employees leave, is there an exit interview to see why they're leaving? Because again, based on this survey, that I'll have to get the details. I'll be happy to send it to you. But based on this wide range of research, most employees don't leave because of money. Are there any other reasons that maybe there's attrition that the city is seeing? So that question, and then the other question, is it feasible for you to provide, because I think the residents kind of want to know how the budget's been handled, where money is going. What years did the staff not get increases? Part one of that question is people don't leave jobs just because of money. There's other reasons. Has the city done any research, any exit interviews, anything else to see what else may be driving staff away if that's a concern, if attrition is a concern? And then two.
Ms. Jones?
Yes.
I'd like to respond to that because I think in a corporate world and in our typical environment, it is truly not money, it's staff satisfaction. But one of the things we compete with, and many of the cities around here compete with, is you have so many cities in this radius that many of the cities are not only targeting your employees, they're reaching out and offering them incentives. I'll use an example of about 4 years ago with the City of Dallas Police Department, where the City of San Antonio purchased a billboard in Dallas to actually entice the employees to come there. And what we're seeing on a regular basis, specifically in public safety and in public works, is a small employee pool of individuals. And we are competing with these other cities. And in some places, like where I came from, there were 3 cities in the Tri-City area. Here you have hundreds of cities in the Metroplex, and we are constantly seeing us compete with the other cities for employees. I can give you a perfect example of a CFO that was hired by one of our neighboring cities about 4 years ago, and one of the other cities up north came to that employee and offered them more money, and they resigned immediately and moved to another city. So one of the things, and it was not about satisfaction, it was about money. But you also have other things that you have to focus on. This city does to me, a fairly good package from a benefit standpoint compared to some places. However, it is just a shortage of local government employees. In fact, when we start to look at our vacancy rates, they are increasing because there are incentives to go other places, and it's just competition. And so from a corporate standpoint, yes, it is definitely about satisfaction. We have to do a little bit more, and I think we do a good job of reaching out and being attentive to our employees, but you've got a lot of these cities around us who just have other things to offer that we're dealing with. And I know as a team that we would be more than willing to sit down and talk to you some more about these, if you'd like to schedule an appointment to come by and talk to me.
Thank you so much for that statement. And I too know how it goes when other corporations or headhunters are reaching out to you and things of that nature. So I'm glad that you mentioned that staff satisfaction is sometimes a factor. Because, personally, I've been offered more money in other positions, but if I'm satisfied, I don't leave. I understand that doesn't go for everyone. So thank you for that example, and thank you for sharing that. And yes, I would like to talk more on it to just learn more.
Absolutely.
All right, we are going to now go back to Ms. Brown, and it looks like that is the last one for tonight. Ms. Brown, you are muted.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, yes, and I just wanted to circle back again. The previous citizen prompted me to also ask for the economic development. Do they do some type of annual report or budget report? That's number one. And then secondly, again, looking at revenues to the city, the field house, does it generate revenue or does it cost the city? And also, how can we access budget reporting on the field house as well? And thirdly, again, as well, maybe attrition for employees leaving could be tied to what I had offered in my first part one, in terms of what is Duncanville offering as far as lunchtime. I mean, I've worked plenty of jobs where do I go eat for lunch? You know, is there a place for me to stop once I leave work for entertainment or grab a meal before I leave the city? So again, it's still to me pointing back to our city is starting to look like a ghost town in terms of what we have to offer. So we need to work more locally to attract that and fill those voids. So again, just I'm asking for annual reporting on the field house and annual reporting on the economic development of what they're doing for the city.
We publish and put on the website the monthly financial reports that include the field house, and I believe that also includes economic development.
So you say you believe, can we be sure? How can how can citizens get access to that?
Yeah,
Just
yes,
simply
Richard,
go.
it does include the EDC.
Okay.
Mhm.
Thank you, Tia. Yeah, you can simply go to the website and it's in the financial reports that are published there.
Okay, thank
It's
you. And then
available.
what? And then can you say, since you're the finance director, if the field house is making money or losing money?
Yeah, I can tell you that from there's two ways to look at that. There's the field house being an enterprise fund. There are certain accounting rules that you have to apply to that cause that to be valued in terms of full accrual accounting. And when you look at it from a full accrual accounting, meaning that you're taking into consideration depreciation on the building, et cetera, it's not a losing matter. But if you look at it from a pure cash standpoint, it is a loss. But at the same time, as there's a huge economic impact that's not measurable on the financial statements of bringing teams, bringing people into the area, and that economic impact is very large. And I know that that the economic development department has done various things to try and measure that economic impact. Also, as we work toward, we've worked very hard toward making it profitable. And just prior to COVID hitting and us having to practically shut down, scale back everything that went on there, we were right on the cusp of having the field house in a profitable standpoint, even on a cash basis. And it's important to note that once it is profitable, then as other funds have to contribute to the general fund for overhead for the work that IT and other departments that are paid out of the general fund, they have to make a transfer to help cover that. So will the field house. So what I'm saying, bottom line, is that eventually it will be profitable if we continue to work hard and recover from the COVID, and it will eventually become a small source of revenue for the general fund, which will help alleviate all the pressures that we have on for taxpayers.
Okay, because I live on the block that the field house is, so I see every day. A lot of days it's just vacant. There's no activity until a tournament comes in. So
Right.
it seems like it's underutilized.
Yeah. Well, since COVID, it's definitely been underutilized, and yeah, it's a big space, and it's hard to keep everything going 24/7, every day of the week. But that we were working toward that end, and when the pandemic is over, I feel sure that we'll be back on track toward that.
Okay, thank you. And I will go on and pull the reports for the economic development. Now, if I have further questions regarding that report, once I read it, who would I address that to?
You can feel free to contact me. My contact information is on the website under the finance department.
Okay, I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Can you hear me, Kristen?
Oh, yes, we can.
Okay, great. So I wanted to follow up with the Ms. Brown's line of questioning regarding the field house. So, Mr. Solomon, here's the history that I think I know about the field house, and you can tell me if I'm right or wrong. But we started out as the Stars Dr. Pepper unit building, which then went to Bob Knight, which then went to Duncanville. And I believe there was a little bit of uproar from the citizens with Duncanville having to pay for the naming rights for the building. So my question is twofold. One, have we recouped the money that was paid for the naming rights to change it? And two, how do we measure against the financial model that was created when this facility was first put there? Because it seems like the Stars couldn't make it work and the Bob Knight didn't really make it work. So now we have it under the Duncanville Fieldhouse name. How are we performing against whatever profitability model that was created when this thing was brought into the scene, I think in 99 or 2000?
All very good questions. And I think I'll tackle the question about the naming rights first. The city of Duncanville owns the building, even when it was the Stars. Basically, we funded that, and the Stars were essentially paying down. We had the debt in our name, so it never really there's really not a naming rights per se change in it. Then when it was Bob Knight's Fieldhouse, again, we owned the building. We owned the debt service that built the building, and I have refinanced that debt to lower the interest rate several years ago, and I believe the debt will be paid off in 2025. So we don't have too many more years to go before that debt service is complete. And then as far as the model, when both under the ownership of the Stars and under the not ownership, but under the contract we had with Bob Knight, the profitability was up to them. It was not a model that we had. And of course, as a hockey arena, there was a completely different purpose for it. And then when it was converted over to basketball courts for the Bob Knight, it was a completely different scenario. And then as we took it over, we've expanded from just trying to do basketball to doing volleyball and just about anything else that needs a large space to hold their events and to do things in that would also be compatible with doing that on a basketball court. And so the profitability model has changed dramatically as we've gone through each of those endeavors. And I would say for the past 3 years, it's been much more stable because our emphasis has been on keeping costs at a minimum and doing everything we can to produce revenue in whatever manner or fashion we can, whether it's through food court services or through tournaments or through hosting leagues that come in and play. And again, one of the things that's very difficult, almost impossible to measure, is how much economic impact. When you have a big tournament coming in, you've got thousands of people coming in that are eating in the restaurants. I can tell you that the places that are in and around the field house just are very welcoming of those tournaments. The hotels are full. And so there's a huge impact. People are spending money within the city of Duncanville when they come in for those tournaments.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for that. So you say that even under the Stars Association that Duncanville owned the building. So in the initial revenue model or profitability model, was the debt intended to be carried out for 25 years or 26 years?
Mr. Summerlin, I'm going to jump in here. Ms. Jones, your questions are worthwhile and have great merit. The depth of information that you're requesting Mr. Summerlin to recall directly from memory is a difficult thing. I think if you want to get into some granularity, which it seems that you wish to do, I would ask that you send Mr. Summerlin an email with a copy to our city manager, and they will be more than happy to respond to your questions in the granularity and detail that you're looking for. Thank
Absolutely,
you.
I'll do that. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right, Mayor, that is it. If you would like to wrap it up.
Thank you very much, City Secretary Kristen, and to our citizens who are participated and those that are watching on Facebook as well. We thank you for your participation tonight and for inputs to our survey. It's very important to us to know what your questions are and your concerns. We are, as a council and as a staff, are very, very responsible in terms of responding to our citizens and doing everything we can to answer those questions that you need to know, because we depend on you. We are your servants. We on the council are elected officials, which means we serve you. We serve at your pleasure because you have put us in this position. And we take that mantle of responsibility very, very seriously. And thank you for allowing us to serve. And for our staff, they are an exceptional staff and do the amount of hours that they put in terms of being able to support our city and all its operations. It is a business operation when we look at it. When Richard goes through the financials, what does it say? We are a business, and that business has to be operated very, very carefully. And what we do as a council is we examine the operations of our city from a financial perspective, but also we balance that in terms of objectivity and subjectivity. What can we do in terms of making our city attractive? And as Ms. Brown was saying, what can we do to attract people and developers and businesses to open businesses in our city to make us more attractive? We look at that. We are very concerned about it. And we do get some consult from individuals. We get input from individuals to see that as well. One thing that I would comment on as we close, that some of our businesses had record months in October and November, right in the middle of COVID, going into the winter. I have talked to some of our businesses, and it was some of their very, very best months ever since opening. So what does that say? It says that you, our citizens of Duncanville, stepped up, you shopped local, you ate local, and you supported our local businesses. And for that, and on behalf of those businesses that I spoke to, and they're very thankful for your patronage. And we as a council and we as a staff are thankful as well that you're doing all you can to support us here in our city. So with that, I will close, and thank you very much to all of our staff and to all of our council for being in attendance tonight. Thank you. Have a blessed evening.
Mayor, did you call the time? 8:34?
8:34. Thank you, City Secretary. Yes.